that roar when you ran out just puts goosebumps on the back of your neck.
Walsh went straight through. Andrew's there.
He's just forever looking for an opportunity.
Exhilarating football.
That's a good sign of a good team.
Accelerates and punches through them.
And he's only going to get better.
And the hammer stands them up. And Queensland going to do it again.
Well, it's Queenslander time here on the Wide World of Sports. I'm Adam Jackson, joined as always by Darren Lockyer and fellow Maroons legend Wally Lewis. Boys, let's kick things off this week talking about your Broncos, Locky, your resurgent Broncos, promising signs in that win over the Dolphins with several key players out. Selwyn Cobbo really stood out. Was that his best game as centre so far?
Yeah, well, it was his first time he crossed the try line in 24, so I think that'll do his confidence the world of good. Look, I think it's been a really measured sort of start to the year for him. Like, it's not like he's tried to overplay his hand. Defensively, he's been good, and just I think he's slowly building his game in that position. So it was nice for him to get a reward with a couple of tries the other night, and I think, you know, he can play fullback, he can play wing, but I think left centre, we've always talked about it, very similar to Greg Inglis. Like he's going to be pretty dangerous in that left centre position. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear you say that, Locky. I thought his positional play was really good. His injection into the back line seemed to be always laced with plenty of power behind him. He is a big, strong fella. And I think he would have inspired himself with that and realised that there's an opportunity. He's not stuck on the wing. There may be a chance for him in the centres, but it'll be quite interesting to see how he goes from here on.
You know, one of the things I guess probably not nervous about, but maybe had some reservations about whether he could handle the workload. But he's been every week building into a good performance, and he got that. So I think he'll go from strength to strength here.
We've seen him play Origin for Queensland on the wing. Potentially, could he play centre this year? I know there's a bit of doubt over the Hammer because Hammer's got a hamstring strain that'll keep him out for about a month. So Val Holmes, you'd think, is a lock. He's so good in the centres for Queensland. Could Selwyn be there this year in centre?
I think if Hammer's fit and Val's fit, I think Billy probably goes that way first. But as we know, a lot can happen in a week in the NRL. So we're still a month out from picking the team. So it comes down a lot to the fitness and form of players. But the incumbents always get a bit of an advantage. But if Selwyn keeps playing well every week, well, he gives himself the best chance. Yeah,
Locky hit the nail on the head there by saying that it's not his preferred position, and there are other players available to fill that role. But it would have been an encouraging fact, I think, for the selectors to see just how well he went and know that if need be, he could be used in that position. He's big, strong, powerful, and can be used there. But I think, probably we've seen him excel on the wing previously and realise that's probably his number one priority, his favourite position. But who knows? Injuries often happen a week short of State of Origin games, and decisions need to be made.
Well, the incumbents on the wings were Tuolangi and Xavier Coates. I think Selwyn got injured last year, and then Xavier filled in, and Xavier held his spot. So, there's a fair bit of difference to playing centre to wing in terms of making decisions defensively, but then also the workload with getting back for the kick, the hit-ups. So if you're not doing that regularly every week, I think there's a bit of an adjustment there that Billy would have to consider.
Yeah, particularly in positional play, I guess you're saying there, Locky. In the centres, they've got to be able to adjust and move all over the place. Whereas the wing, they're basically on the edge of the centres, so they'll certainly do their best to skate back as quick as they possibly can to take care of the kicking game. But in the centres, it's certainly going to be an increase in what's required, the requirements.
And Gene Miles used to remind you how hard he'd work in the centres for you to make you look good in Queensland.
He told me every time. He said, you weren't half the player that you were. I did all the work for you. I took care of all the 5'8" that managed to step round you with severe comfort. So that was it. Gino, you give yourself a pat on the back there. You need one.
He should have been playing in the forwards. He was that big, right? No wonder he dominated in the centres.
And eventually got the opportunity to go and play in the forwards. And I think that his respect for the forwards upon his move there increased dramatically. All the guys used to say, now you bludgers in the back line can understand how hard the work is here.
Well, he's looking fitter than what he did when he played. He's lost 3 kilos shaving his moustache.
And just on the Broncos too, speaking of origin, Reece Walsh came back from that facial fracture, didn't miss a beat. He was outstanding in that win over the Dolphins. How good is this selection headache that we're going to talk about for the next month or so? Ponga or Walsh? Walsh or Ponga? Who do you pick as your one?
Well, again, I think they're neck and neck, and form. And Billy, he's big on watching movement off the ball and habits from players. So I think you'll be watching both these players very closely. He's obviously a big fan of both, but a lot for mine, I don't think anyone has a stranglehold on that jersey. It's neck and neck. And look, I think Reece, while he created some opportunities the other night, I think he'd still be disappointed with some of the errors he made. And I think he would more than anyone know that, and I think that's something that he needs to manage moving every week between now and Origin, because you just can't afford to be making cheap errors. Yeah,
I'm sure the selectors will say that's a good problem to have if they've got those guys competing for that position. And as you just said, Locky, there are improvements to be made, but they're looking pretty good at the moment. They're looking very good.
Interesting to hear Maroons coach Billy Slater. He was at the Origin Series launch earlier this week in Melbourne, and he got asked the question, would you be open to having both in the 17? And he said yes. That's a possibility. That creates even more excitement.
Well, even the 18, right? So we've seen the 18th player being activated a couple of times.
Yeah, I think it was Nico Hines in game 1 last year for the HIA.
So, I think you've got to, I guess at the moment you still, if you're looking at, without going into too much, Harry Grant and Ben Hunt, 2 players have been instrumental. So I'm not saying you can't, but if you were to pick, 2 fullbacks, you got 2 smaller people on the reserves bench, which leaves you. But look, I think, like I said, the game you need to have some sort of backup plans in place for head knocks and concussion.
Yeah, and those smaller guys, Locky, I think they've got the ability to be able to move in, come into dummy half, be able to race away from there with almost monotonous regularity at great speed and put even more pressure on the opposition defence. So if it's a problem, it's a good problem to have.
Now, the Cowboys coming off a loss to the Eels, have they copped a bit of a reality check there, Locky? They were top of the table a couple of weeks ago. They've now slipped back to 4th. Is that probably a better reflection?
Well, we said last week it was a danger game.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think they've been, when they're playing well, the Cowboys, they're one of the best attacking teams in the competition. But when they have these lapses and periods in games where they're not, competing and executing, they come back to the field, very quickly. So, I think the coach has a few, I wouldn't say issues, but the coach needs to find a way to see how they can get an 80-minute performance together.
Yeah, you're right, Locky. I mean, there's 2 Cowboys fans that were pretty disappointed with what we've seen, but if there is a point of ease, it's that they are quite capable of performing much better than they have been, and I think the coach will be demanding it. Will the selection acts come out? Well, I guess only time will tell, but they really do have to start improving their performances. Otherwise, the points that they won't be gaining, and we'll see them slide down the ladder and put the pressure on them later in the season.
I think they need to respect the ball more. You always talk about it, Locky, building pressure in the game. So a lot of the times you watch them, they try and score off every play. They score amazing tries, though. I think it was that Scott Drinkwater try against the Eels, but their completion rate was too low. They tried to be too fancy too early.
Because like I said, when their passes stick and they're all out attack, they look amazing. But at some point, you've got to, you're not going to you can't play that way against the top defensive teams.
Yeah.
At some point, that'll just bring you undone. So they do need to go back to, okay, well, let's earn the right to throw the footy around first. And to do that, you've got to hold the ball, kick, get your kick chase on and start to build pressure, build fatigue in the opposition, then open up.
Yeah.
They've had some trouble getting their positional play in order and being able to get to the areas of the field where they're going to feel comfortable and they can afford to start throwing a ball and be more creative in their attack. It hasn't been good so far this season, and as Locky said, they will need to start putting that in place. Otherwise, the pressure will build the further the season goes.
Well, looking at their next 5 games, so they've got the Sharks this weekend. I think that's the Sunday game. Sharks, Panthers, Dolphins, Titans, Rabbitohs. So how many of them do you think they need to win, or how do they need to go in that 5-game stretch to prove they're not flat track bullies?
Well, Sharks are away. That's tough.
Yeah, Panthers are at home.
Panthers at home.
Yep.
I think the Dolphins and the Titans and the Rabbitohs potentially might be all away.
Yep.
So they don't have a lot of home games, but a lot of those teams are away, below them on the ladder.
They've got to win at least 3, I think.
Look, I just think they need to focus on having a good performance against the Sharks. And I think you go there not with the mindset of trying to outscore them. I mean, that's obviously the
end game, yeah.
The end game, but I think you need to go back to that point you made. I think they need to start getting into the grind of the game, building pressure, because when you play these good teams like the Sharks, you got to earn the right to throw the footy around.
And I think their forwards certainly do need to be more in control and more dominant. They really appear to be just getting through the work that's allowed for them by the opposition, rather than demanding that they get some good field position and place after their kick and chase game their opponents deep inside their own territory from the corners. That has been an area of their game which doesn't appear to have played much of a role at all this year.
And speaking of their forwards, a couple of them copped criticism post-match. Jason Taumalolo, Kili Kefu, Fini Fuiaki, for posing with Parramatta players, big smiles in their face afterwards. I think it was a Daily Telegraph article. Do you think that criticism is warranted, or do you think that's just lazy criticism? They're allowed to be mates after full time?
Yeah, they're allowed to be mates. And I think fan engagement and social media is such a big part of the game now. We're in the entertainment business, and I can understand, there'll be Cowboys supporters that are disappointed by the loss, and if they see a player, and I think that it's a smile that they're not. It's 100% true smile. They're smiling for the photo or for the camera to help the game promote itself. I wouldn't read too much into it.
Yeah.
You remember when you used to swap jerseys? Can you remember back in the day, a moment that stood out? Because growing up watching footy, you'd play against maybe Andrew Johns and swap his jersey. Can you remember any famous jersey swaps you're involved in? I'll put you on the spot.
I remember a few blokes, you look back at team photos of when you won the World Cup or when you won an Origin, and there's one, maybe 2 blokes in the opposition jersey. It looks a bit off. It looks a bit odd. So I think if the players, I'm sure management now go, don't swap until after the presentation. But I didn't swap a lot of my jerseys. I think there was a couple of times when we played against Great Britain, I had a few offers, but I would always wait till after the presentation. But I got a couple in my kit bag at home. Sometimes you swap jerseys with teammates too. I got a couple of Wendells in my kit bag.
He would tell you they go for a higher price than your jerseys.
Well, I'm going to say that Wendell would have said his was much more valuable. But the price of swapping a jersey, I got a couple with Brett Kenny.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me that there was only one difficulty. The Queensland jersey was much fatter than the New South Wales jersey. So, but it was a thrill, and I think it comes out of the respect that you have for the guy that you're playing against. Some of the great Origin challenges, they were tough to play in, but at the end of the game, it was all over, and you got to appreciate the guy that you played against, because you knew that he demanded that you provided the best performance you possibly could if you were going to give your team much of a go. But yeah, he was certainly one of them. And I did one with Olsen Filipano.
Oh, yeah.
Olsen Filipano was a wonderful bloke. I think he ran over me about 20 times in that game, and I was very happy to take that famous black jersey away from him.
Nice. And moving along now to the Dolphins, Wayne Bennett wasn't too disappointed in that loss. They were in the arm wrestle for a long time against the Broncos. Injuries became too much of a factor there, especially when the hammer went off. Do you still think, even with the injuries, they're a top 8 side? Like, they'll be thereabouts come finals?
I said at the start of the year they're on the edge of the 8, but I think if they're going to play finals, they have to have all their players fit.
Yeah.
They're still building their roster. They were a bit disadvantaged by coming in the way they did, and they weren't, a lot of other clubs thought, okay, a new club coming, we need to get our best talent under contract. So it was very hard for the Dolphins to build a roster from day one. So they're building it, but like from a roster on paper, they need every player fit for them to play finals.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Locky. And you need those players certainly when the players aren't fit, if they're injured and missing the game, or just as importantly, players that are missing during a State of Origin series.
Yeah.
You're going to be missing a couple of those players. That certainly in the early days for the Broncos was where we found that we struggled most, where we just weren't able to fill the positions quite comfortably. So that'll come around. I'm sure they'll be able to adapt and adjust a little bit, but certainly they've got to be able to perform better in the games that are a toss of the coin affair at the moment. I'm sure the coach hasn't been all that happy, but he's a realist.
They're 5th at the moment, I think. Is that where you expect them to be at this point, Locky, or are they probably going better than expected?
They've had a bye.
Yeah, so it's hard to gauge.
Oh, look, they're always going to play for each other, and they're always going to hang in there. That's what Wayne Bennett teams do. They just probably, when Flegler wasn't playing, Farnworth wasn't there, and the hammer went off, they lack strike.
Yeah.
So, look, again, sitting at 5th, that doesn't surprise me right now, but do I see them staying there for a long period of the season? Well,
probably
maybe not.
Yeah. There becomes a point where it becomes a bridge too far, and I fear that's where it's the critical point at the moment for the Dolphins. You'll see them in Friday night footy up from Darwin against the Parramatta Eels. Yeah. So with the hammer out, Trey Fuller, who's been a star for the Redcliffe Dolphins in the Queensland Cup, you'll see him diminutive fullback. And also there's a record Jesse Bromwich breaks. He becomes the first player in NRL history to start 300 games as a prop. So players have obviously broken the 300 game mark, but he's the first to start 300 games as a front row, which is amazing. Yeah.
That is absolutely extraordinary.
Do we know how old he was when he made his debut? What do you know?
Not sure, because this is his 322nd game. So he only played 22 games on the bench for Melbourne before he was thrust into the starting side.
Interesting game coming up too, Adam, having been there at a couple of them previously. The Eels, when you come up against the Eels in Darwin, that is not an easy game at all.
Because they're used to it. They've played in Darwin.
Yeah, and they've got themselves wonderful support of the Eels in Darwin. Sure, I'm sure there'll be plenty of Queenslanders there and others that don't like Parra, but it'll be a tough affair, that one.
I always love watching Brad Arthur. He always has like 10 water bottles. So watch that Channel 9 coverage. He has them lined up for like maybe every 10 minutes of the match.
Hydrate in Darwin. Yeah. Who wins a fight between the dolphin and an eel in the water?
In the water.
Oh,
that's hard.
Well. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know.
The dolphin would outthink the eel, I think,
right.
slightly, as Wayne Bennett potentially could for Parramatta.
See. They're pretty wild eels once they get going.
Yeah, you don't want to be bitten by one.
Caught one? Have you tried to catch one on a fishing rod?
No.
I've seen my kids catch them. Yeah, they put up a fight.
And is it an electric eel as well? That could make the battle even tougher.
Let's wrap it up with the Titans. Golden Point loss to the Canberra Raiders. How devastated would they be by that defeat, Locky?
Oh, look, it'd be heartbreaking because they've obviously been under a lot of pressure, a lot of talk about their performances. And to have that, look, it was a much better performance by them. They showed plenty of resilience. they looked a bit more fluent in attack. So, like, I think while they'll be heartbroken, I think they would hit the ground running this week at training and feeling pretty confident about their performance.
And there's been plenty of headlines about the game versus the Raiders as well. Unfair. A lot of the guys, and certainly the coaching staff, did not take much of that too well at all. So I guess in that respect, we can be guaranteed, I reckon, that we'll see a pretty good performance from the Titans this week. They'll be quite furious as to the argument that took place, and we might see their best performance of the season so far.
And do you think Des Hasler maybe was tactical when he came out and complained about the penalty count, the referee, and that's what Wally was alluding to with Ricky Stuart's comments?
But did he come out and say the penalty count was 10-1?
I can't remember the exact figure, but he was disappointed how many they got penalised. And Ricky said they got penalised because they were cheating and they were holding the ball and slowing it down. And then he told him to F off. And I don't think you're a part of the NRL until Ricky has told you to F off.
Yeah.
I think.
For goodness sake, get off.
Part of the game. This feels like the 1987 grand final.
All over.
Did Ricky play in the 87 grand final? Was that a bit before his time? Because Desi would have played.
He was still around.
Well, Ricky might have still been in rugby union like he's early days.
I remember there was a stat going into the game. Ricky, out of 25 games, Ricky's won 19 of them.
Yeah, okay.
So Desi was about to, get one up on him, but it wasn't to be. And
wow.
Yeah, so look, it adds to the theatre of the game, doesn't it? Two halfbacks in the tunnel going at it.
Another big one for Desi this week because they play Manly. You reckon he won't have the Titans up for that one? He'd love to win that game.
Yeah, look, like I said, I don't think they'll lose. They'll gain confidence from the way they played. They'll be. I mean, Jaden Campbell didn't look good at the end of the game.
Yeah, with his knee again. Yeah.
So I wonder, like, even if he plays, he's not 100% fit. I think that impacts them.
Yeah.
AJ looked good, playing at 6. So I think they'll be, like I said, their confidence will go up, and I think they'll be up for a big game against Manly.
It surprised me during the commentary too that the stat was Kieran Foran's only kicked 1 field goal in his NRL career. Does that put them in a disadvantage at a point like that going into Golden Point?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, he's not. He's always had a halfback inside him that probably does that job. So they missed Tanner Boyd in that respect. But a bit like the Dolphins, they bring in Jermaine Osako to come in and have a crack. So maybe there's someone in the outside backs there that, I mean, the way Kelly kicked that goal from the sideline, maybe he can drop kick. I think sometimes if you don't have a half that's noted to kick field goals, well, surely there's someone in the team that can.
Speaking of Jermaine, how far can he kick a ball?
Yeah.
I've seen very few that have matched that. It's gone over 55 metres, 58 metres. That was stunning.
It was huge.
To have that at your needs, if you really need it, to have it at your call. That'd be magnificent. But that was absolutely stunning.
It always surprises me the lack of preparation NRL teams in Golden Point for a field goal. It's like they've never practiced this ever. Like, surely, Locky, in your day, would you have practiced field goals with like Alf and Kevy and those guys?
Sometimes it comes down to an individual in the team that knows how to direct their team to get to the position.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, I think the amount of games that go down to the wire now, you need to have, and not just one setup, you need to have a few.
Yeah.
Like, setting up to kick it and then bring out 3 or 4 defenders and then run it.
Fake,
Another option as well. So there's all these different scenarios that you can create. And I think as the game is evolving through concussion as well, like, we're going to see a lot more 18th man introductions. So I think that you've got to be able to adapt to that as well. You've got to have, I reckon, multiple players that can play multiple positions in their teams.
Almost like a special teams guy in the NFL who can almost come on and kick a field goal,
Yeah, well, I just think 2 points is 2 points and they're so valuable that you need to, I think as the game evolves, more and more attention to detail is going to come into the coaching, and I think simulation of different scenarios is really important.
Yeah, and they've got to do it so carefully. You hit the nail on the head, Locky, by saying it's one guy doing it. It really needs to be absolute perfection, because the referees have already displayed on a couple of occasions that they've regarded a shepherd play, obstruction that's taken place. And I think when you've got the game at hand and it's the field goal that'll decide the outcome, if that goes, and it might even go to the judgment of another that will decide whether it was a fair play or not. They've got to make sure that they get that 100% correct.
Well, Fogarty was exactly how you do it.
Yeah.
Got it to the exact spot, right footer. He was up flat, and he got a good ball and went bang. That's the way you set up for a field goal for your designated kicker. That was the way to do it.
What about your best ever, Locky? Your best field goal? I think I can point out one that you had at Lang Park, Suncorp, at club level, where you got it. It was about 44 metres out. It was just short of the half bay line, and it was flying through the post.
Well, that was against the Titans. Yeah, it hit the right upright, then the left
into
upright,
the left.
then went over. But I think if you're the designated kicker, it's just making sure you get to play the ball in the right spot.
Yeah.
So when the ball comes to you, you know the best position for you to kick, and it's making sure you tell your forwards or your hooker to get there, to the next spot, and then you're ready to go. And then you do need a clean, crisp ball, because the markers will be at you, the defence will be at you, and you just need to be able to drop it straight on your foot and let it go.
Yeah.
How sweet would it have been for Fogarty kicking a field goal in extra time against the club that didn't want him?
There may have been some... he might have been clicking the heels together, I think, after that.
Not as happy as Ricky was.
Yeah, exactly right. As the Raiders continue their climb up the ladder. But Friday night footy kicks off for Queensland. That game in Darwin, as we mentioned earlier, Wayne Bennett's Dolphins up against the Parramatta Eels. Catch it all live and free on Channel 9 this week.
This year, NRL on 9 is your one-stop shop for all footy.
That's right, Freddie. Not about the highlights, action, 7 days a week.
Billy and Gus podcast, get that on your drive on the way home. Immortal Behaviour, grab a seat on the couch for that. And of course, my favourite, Freddie in the 8.
The best footy brains, the biggest games.
Don't trust the algorithm, subscribe to NRL on 9 and get all your entertainment there.